Hello and welcome to The Last Word. How significant are Hillary Clinton's comments about Hafiz Saeed and terrorist bases in Pakistan? And where do Indo-US relations stand today? That's the issue tonight with India's ambassador to the United States, Nirupama Rao, a member of the National Security Advisory Board, Pramit Pal Chaudhry, from Washington, Senior Research Fellow of the Heritage Foundation, Lisa Curtis, and joining us shortly from Islamabad, former Secretary of Defense Production, Lieutenant General Talat Masood. Mrs. Rao, Hillary Clinton has said that Hafiz Saeed is one of the principal architects of 2611, which is perhaps the strongest statement ever made by Washington about this gentleman. And she's also said that Pakistan must do more to ensure that its territory is not used as a launching pad for terror. Do you get the feeling that Hillary Clinton might have launched a new attack on Pakistan's handling of terror?
Well, I think on this issue, India and the United States have in many ways expressed a solidarity of positions. We've said to the United States time and again that our view is that Pakistan has to turn its back on terrorism. And today what you heard the Secretary of State saying was essentially an expression of support for India's position and, as I think she put it, unmistakable solidarity when it comes to tackling the whole threat of terrorism.
But would you accept that this is a step further than Washington has gone ever before? The language is more strong than she's ever used before.
Well, she certainly expressed her opinions without any ambivalence or ambiguity, which we welcome.
Lisa Curtis, welcome as Hillary Clinton's comments are in New Delhi. One of the questions that people ask is, why isn't this sort of language used when Americans go to Pakistan? For example, a few weeks ago, when America first announced the bounty on Hafiz Saeed, your ambassador in Islamabad issued a statement that most people thought was almost a contradiction. Do you have a tendency to say one thing in Delhi and another in Islamabad?
Well, I think Hillary Clinton has been very clear, even when she's been in Pakistan, about the U.S. view toward the terrorism that's emanating from that country. And we see increasing frustration here in Washington with Pakistan's continued support for groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba. And I think this came through even in President Obama's speech from Kabul last week, when he said the U.S. hoped that Pakistan would be a cooperative partner in countering terrorism, but clearly the implication was we were not seeing that kind of cooperation. Now, I agree with you, it was a mistake for the U.S. to first put out a bounty on Hafiz Muhammad Saeed, but then yet walk that bounty back and say, well, it was money that is going toward reward money for getting information to prosecute Hafiz Saeed. And I think that was a mistake, because then it sends the signal that the U.S. doesn't have enough information to prosecute Hafiz Muhammad Saeed in a U.S. court. It's right to put pressure on Pakistan to do something about Saeed, to not let him prance around Pakistan making speeches, but to admit that the U.S. may not have the information it needs to prosecute him. I think that was a mistake by the U.S.
General Masood, we're discussing the comment made by Hillary Clinton today in New Delhi when she described Hafiz Saeed as a principal architect of 2611. She also went further to say that Pakistan must not allow its territory to be used as a launching pad for terror against India. What do you, sitting in Islamabad, make of Hillary Clinton's strong language? And secondly, what do you make of the fact that she said all of this on Indian soil, standing beside the Indian foreign minister?
Well, I think it has become customary for Hillary Clinton and for other senior dignitaries who visit India to make comments which are unfavorable towards Pakistan. And I think they also use this as an opportunity to show solidarity with India, and also to build pressure on Pakistan. So I think it serves several of their present policy motives by doing this.
Tell me something. These comments no doubt will attract a lot of press attention tomorrow in the papers when they get published in Pakistan, but could they also have an adverse impact on your already troubled relationship with Washington?
Surely, because we were expecting that these are very delicate times as far as the US-Pakistan relations are concerned, and we were hoping that both the sides will be much more nuanced in their approaches. But if you continue to be that aggressive and harsh, especially at times when Pakistan really is bleeding, every day we are having so many casualties as far as fighting terrorism and insurgency is concerned. And if in that America continues to say that we are not doing enough, I think it's pouring fuel on fire.
Pramit Chaudhary, let's concentrate a little bit on the actual substance that lies behind Hillary Clinton's comment. Pakistan already has made it clear that as far as they are concerned, they don't have sufficient evidence to prosecute Hafiz Saeed. Now, America too is making it clear that the bounty is for intelligence that can lead to the filing of charges. So what does Hillary Clinton mean when she says that Saeed is the principal architect of 2611? Does she have the evidence to back up that charge, or is she making a charge without the evidence there?
Well, as you know, Bruce Rydell at Brookings and some of the other sources spoken in America have said that the raid in Abbottabad at bin Laden's hideout led to them having direct documentation showing that there was a communication between bin Laden and Hafiz Saeed, and that at least David Headley's reconnaissance reports on Mumbai were given to bin Laden via Hafiz Saeed. Now, that set of documents, though, so far we have only these statements by Rydell and a few others because they have not been released in the public domain. But if they will, and if they are, I would argue, therefore, that America at least will have some very strong evidence linking Hafiz Saeed directly to Al-Qaeda and directly to Mumbai 2611.
Mrs. Rao, your ambassador in the United States, would you endorse that America has strong evidence and that they don't simply need to pay bounty to get evidence, they have it already and they can, if they want, put pressure on Pakistan to actually prosecute as well?
Karan, we approach this issue in a very focused manner, and our view all along has been that Hafiz Saeed is one of the principal architects of the Mumbai attacks, and that he deserves to and should be brought to justice. This has been the burden of our refrain, whether it's with the United States when we speak about this, or with the international community.
That I understand, but when Hillary uses your language, is she also reflecting the fact that she has the evidence to support the charge? Or is America offering the bounty as a way of securing the evidence so that then they can prosecute? Which is it?
I really wouldn't split too many hairs on this, Karan.
But isn't she doing that already?
I don't believe she is. I think the United States is seized of the seriousness of this matter. And I think that we must recognize, and we must be able to speak openly about that. And I think the United States is speaking out very openly about the role of Hafiz Saeed in the Mumbai attacks and the need for Pakistan to bring this individual to speedy justice.
Lisa Curtis, a moment ago in your first answer, you said that it was a mistake for America having announced the bounty to then qualify that the bounty was not for prosecution and arrest so much as an attempt to try and solicit information and evidence that could then lead to a charge being filed. In response, you've heard the Indian ambassador say that she does believe that evidence exists, and you've heard Pramit Chaudhary say that the papers that were found in Abbottabad suggest that evidence is there and it's good evidence. What then does Hillary Clinton reiterating the bounty today imply? That America has the evidence, or it's still paying to get the evidence? Which is it?
Well, I can't comment specifically on the evidence itself, but we know Hafiz Muhammad Saeed is the founder of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, which is the group that's responsible for the Mumbai attacks. So I think that it's clear that Pakistan needs to do something about this individual and this group. And I think, Talat Masood, I appreciated his comments that Pakistan is suffering from terrorist attacks, but it can't expect to allow the leader of a terrorist group to move around freely, make speeches, act in defiance of the international community, and not pay a price for that kind of activity. So I think Secretary Clinton is expressing U.S. frustration that Pakistan is not doing more to rein in this dangerous group. It's a danger to Pakistan itself. And I think that the issue of what is the specific evidence against this individual is not really the issue. I agree with the ambassador here. The issue is he is the founder, the leader, the ideological inspiration for this group that conducted this heinous terrorist act, and something needs to be done to rein him in.
In that event, General Massoud, let me ask you this. This is clearly evidence, as Lisa Curtis says, of America's escalated frustration with the response from Islamabad. Do you believe this time round there will be a better, more encouraging, more appropriate response, or will Pakistan once again brush it off with the casual statement, give us evidence, we can't act till we get it?
Well, I think Pakistan is also caught in a very difficult situation. We have to understand that Pakistan finds it extremely difficult to take on Lashkar-e-Taiba head on, So I think, and it also finds it, because there is also a lot of sympathy, both at the social and political level, for these groups within Pakistan today, unfortunately. And Pakistan is today fighting several battles. One is, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the sacrifices that have been made, but at the same time it is also trying to fight a political battle. And you can see that there is some sort of a pseudo-political party in which, what they call the Defy Pakistan. They are probably trying to sort of integrate them in the political process.
Can I interrupt you there? Can I interrupt and put this to you? In fact, you mentioned the Defy Pakistan. One of the most prominent people on Defy Pakistan platforms hurling invective both at India and America is Hafiz Saeed. So when you say that you're fighting multiple battles, what do you say to Washington and Delhi when they point out that the one battle that Pakistan assiduously is not fighting is the battle to bring Hafiz Saeed to justice?
Well, you see, if you ask me or if you ask certain liberal people, then the approach would be different. But those, who are in the government and in the state responsible for, addressing this problem, they say that the challenge is so enormous and it has been cultivated as a result of years of both in collaboration with the US as well as, outside the US against India, that we have got monsters and we can't just deal with them, head on. So I think this is the way that they are finding, and especially at a time when the state has become too soft and the non-state actors are too strong.
Okay.
So I think what they are trying to do is to sort of bring them into the political process and neutralize them.
All right, that is no doubt an eloquent answer, but for America, is it a convincing answer? Let me put that first to you, Ambassador, and then I'll put it to Pramit. You hear what the Americans say. Will they be convinced by that answer?
I don't believe anybody in the international community would be convinced by that answer, and I'll tell you why. I think there is it seems to me, and this is most unfortunate that it's happening this way, that there is an irreconcilable ambivalence at the heart of this whole debate within Pakistan about how to define terrorism, who is a terrorist, and what is the role of organizations like the Lashkar-e-Taiba.
In which case, do you expect, after Hillary's categorical, unequivocal and stronger than ever before statement in Delhi, that you will see Washington put greater pressure on Islamabad regarding Hafiz Saeed, regarding the stalled 2611 cases, as well as terrorist bases in general? Or will it all be forgotten once she's got back on the plane and headed home?
Well, I don't think there will be too much pressure, for the simple reason that the other battle that America and Pakistan are fighting with each other is the question of the Haqqani network in Afghanistan, which
and that has priority.
That right now I would argue has priority.
All right, in that case, let's take a break. We're going to lose General Massoud from Islamabad, but we're going to continue this discussion and talk about other issues that perhaps are there and important and perhaps even irritants in Indo-US relations. That's in a moment's time. See you after the break. Welcome back to The Last Word. We're discussing the Clinton visit. Lisa Curtis, let's come to some of the issues that could be said to be holding up Indo-US relations. And first, difficulties over India's nuclear liability law, which talks about both right of recourse as well as the possibility of tort cases. Are American concerns ameliorated by the rules that India has come up with? Admittedly, they are of course stalled in Parliament. Or are those concerns still substantially unaddressed?
Well, I think there are still concerns that the U.S. has over the nuclear liability law. And let me just say here, I think the fundamentals of the India-U.S. relationship are strong. I think the U.S. and India will inevitably agree and cooperate when it comes to issues like hedging against China's rise, fighting terrorism in the region. But we have had some stumbling blocks in the last year with the relationship, and the disagreement over the nuclear liability law is one of those, and it's very important. In the U.S., people see that the U.S. expended a great deal of capital. It put its international non-proliferation credentials on the line by pushing for the NSG waiver for India to receive nuclear fuel and technology. And now this legislation, which virtually shuts out U.S. companies from being able to participate in that civil nuclear industry, really has people puzzled and questioning just how strategic and vital this relationship is for the U.S. So I think one of the problems is not that the U.S.-India partnership was oversold, but perhaps the civil nuclear deal was oversold, in that the U.S. saw it as a major gesture toward India, whereas India perhaps saw it as just a correction of a mistake from history. So I think there are very different perceptions on each side about what this deal meant. But certainly the U.S. Would like to see India sign the CSC agreement and then also bring its liability law in conjunction with that international convention.
Let me put that to you, Ambassador Rao. The real nutshell that you get there is that America feels it did everything it could for India's clearance through the NSG, but got let down in return, and that the nuclear liability law is really a breach of trust.
I wouldn't use such strong language you just said about being let down and words like breach of trust. I'd agree with Lisa when she says that the fundamentals of this relationship remain very strong. The vital signs of this partnership.
What about when she says America is puzzled by this law?
Let me continue. I think we've had a very fulsome debate and discussion with the United States on the issue of the civil nuclear liability law. And let me also add that the discussions have been productive. We've had a very good meeting of a working group early this year.
But America's not satisfied. That's what we've heard.
No, but I think what we have been able to do is to tackle the issue with a degree of transparency, candor, sincerity.
But would you accept it remains unresolved and it remains an irritant?
I would say it is not. I wouldn't call it an irritant. Certain questions have been raised by the American side. We have sought to address them and answer these questions in all honesty and candor, and differences are being narrowed as we speak, and the companies, the US companies, are working towards an early commercial agreement in their discussions with the Nuclear Power Corporation of India.
Pramay Pal Chaudhary, a second area of concern is American pressure on India to reduce trade, and in particular to reduce oil purchases from Iran. Did you get the feeling that the language used by Mrs. Clinton when she was in Delhi and Calcutta suggests that there is greater appreciation and understanding of India's position, or is India still in danger of in some way being sanctioned in June or July?
Well, I think even before Mrs. Clinton came, the message from America was that they don't want to sanction us if they can afford to do so. The White House and the State Department have agreed that India has drastically reduced the amount of oil that we import from Iran. Iran has now been largely replaced by Iraq. Iraq is now our second largest source of oil. And we have gone from about 800,000 barrels down to probably about 300,000 barrels per day from Iran. However, the US Congress expects something more formal from India on this, which India is refusing to give, on the simple grounds that we don't accept the sanctions, and therefore we don't see why we have to provide.
So is this an irritant or not?
It's an irritant, but this one I don't think is going to be major, because the figures when they come out in April will definitely show that India has reduced by a fairly large amount the amount of oil we import from Iran.
I take the point that Pramit has just made, Mrs. Rao, that this is not going to be, in fact, a long-lasting problem, and that America does believe India is doing quite a lot. But was it a mistake to have allowed Hillary Clinton to coincide in Delhi with an Iranian trade delegation on the same day and virtually at the same time? Surely we had the capacity to ensure that they didn't meet up in our capital.
I don't think there was any mistake being committed here. We've had, as Pramit just pointed out, with the United States, a very useful exchange of views on this whole issue of the questions relating to Iran. And I'm not just talking about oil imports from Iran. There is the larger issue of Iran's nuclear program and the legitimate questions that have been raised about what its intentions are. So on all these issues, we have a very productive discussion and exchange of views with the United States.
So very quickly, Iran is not the irritant the press has been speculating and suggesting.
I think the debate in the media has tended to magnify this issue out of all proportion.
Very quickly, could you endorse that for me, Lisa Curtis? Literally in 10 seconds.
Well, I think India is moving in the right direction when it comes to Iranian oil sanctions, and the U.S. has been able to get across its point that India should be in line with the rest of the international community on the sanctions issue. It's difficult for India in terms of not wanting to look like it's kowtowing to U.S. pressure, but at the same time, I think Indian leaders realize just how important this issue is to the U.S.
All right, I will let you have the last word. With that, it sounds as if there is greater understanding on the Iran issue than there is on the nuclear liability set of differences. My thanks to Nirupama Rao for coming to studio. My thanks also to Pramit Chaudhary, to Lisa Curtis for joining us from Washington, and General Talat Masood, who's with us earlier from Islamabad. And if you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye, good night. See you tomorrow, same channel, same time.